So what's going on, guys? My name's Chopper, and welcome everyone back to a brand new video on the channel. And today we're going to be looking at the top 10 secretly overpowered weapons in PUBG. Some of these weapons that don't really get their time in the spotlight and I feel deserve a little bit more respect. Some of these weapons are underused and unappreciated just because they're map exclusives, and to some degree that makes sense. But these are weapons that are just as good, if not better, than some of the more mainstream choices. And if you happen to come across these weapons in their particular maps, then you might want to think twice about passing up on them. If you guys do go on to enjoy today's video, please make sure to show me by dropping a like rating on the video. It does help out a lot. Subscribe if you are brand new around here, of course. PUBG has got some big stuff planned in 2020, so you're going to want to make sure you stick around here and to catch up on all of that. Also, guys, my live streams are now featured over on Twitch, which a lot of you guys have already went over there and followed. If you haven't, please make sure you do. I'm going to be on a trip for a couple of days, and as soon as I get back, then we're going to be streaming every single night over there. It's a really cool place to hang out where I can interact with you guys, so make sure to go drop that a follow if you haven't done so already. But without further ado, guys, let's go ahead and get into the top 10 most secretly overpowered weapons in PUBG. Coming today at the number 10 spot, we have one of my personal favorites, the MP5. Now, this weapon is interesting because not only does it become the map exclusive replacement of the Vector on Vikendi, it also has better statistics in virtually every category as well. The MP5 does 33 base damage, whereas the Vector does 31. The MP5 also has faster bullet travel speed, which is kind of hard to believe up against the Vector. It has the exact same options as far as the amount of attachments you can put on it. The extended mag is also better on the MP5, having 40 rounds instead of just 33. Of course, when it comes to fire rate, though, almost nothing beats the Vector, including the MP5, which is a close second but doesn't quite get to that just insane bullet hose speed. There's almost nothing quite comparable to that fire rate of the Vector. The MP5 again gets pretty close, but isn't enough to really make a mark on it. In my personal opinion, though, the MP5 is the easier version to use and is much more consistent in that regard as well. The customizability that you get so you can use it to your liking is just excellent. It absolutely shreds anyone with level 3 armor, and so it's great for those up close engagements. The only thing it's not so great at is shooting from and into vehicles. Other than that, it's an absolute machine. Coming today at our number 9 spot is the Winchester 94. Of course, with the recent addition of the scope, it completely changed how everyone plays using this weapon. Now, one of the things you might not have known is this little old Winchester is one of the leading in the pack of body hit impact power per bullet. The impact power on this is 16,000 per shot, and to put that into reference, the AUG is only around 9,000. What this is going to mean for you is the Winchester is absolutely amazing at fighting people across range with DMRs that are peeking you. Your goal is obviously to put damage out and keep their aim off of you, and the Winchester does that perfectly. Even if you can land one bullet that doesn't quite kill them, you're going to throw their aim completely off. Maybe if they fire at the exact same time, they're going to kick up so far that you're going to end up safe, and so it's a really good like safety weapon. It's a great cross between something like a bolt action where you really have to commit to it like a Kar 98, and then something that's a little bit more viable and flexible like a DMR. The Winchester bridges very nicely between the two. Coming today at the number 8 spot, we have the VSS. I've said this from the beginning, the VSS is not the most competitive weapon in the game, but that doesn't mean it isn't good for the scenarios that it's cut out for. I mentioned very briefly in a video that the VSS recently received a shadow buff, and I'm not sure if everyone was aware of this. The horizontal recoil that this put out in full auto has almost been completely eliminated. This has happened within the past maybe 1 or 2 months, and it wasn't mentioned inside the patch notes, which is why it's called a shadow buff, but the VSS is now significantly easier to use in full auto, and that's how I recommend you play it. I don't think it's best played as a sniper or even like a DMR in that traditional sense. Short to medium range engagements where you can scope in and put out a nice spray is where the VSS really shines. Because the average player has gotten so much better with awareness and movement, it's really hard to pick people off with many shots using the VSS. Even if they don't know exactly where you are, it's really difficult to pinpoint them down. You just more or less need to be aware of how and where you're going to use this weapon. Coming today at the number 7 spot, ladies and gentlemen, we have the M16. Now, this has always been a difficult weapon to balance, I think, and I understand why it's gone through so many changes because it's very similar to the M4 in terms of its functionality. Obviously, the single tap and burst fire options on the M16 are the thing that hold it back the most. This has gone through a number of changes over PUBG's lifetime, but now the M16 is the only 5.56 AR that can one-shot someone without a helmet. The damage per bullet on the M16, of course, is going to be slightly higher than something like the M4, the SCAR, or even the AUG, but when it comes to its overall utility, this is where the M16 is a little bit controversial. Some people love it for its up-close and personal battles, but I tend to to think that it's really only best used as a scuffed DMR. I understand the difficulties they have trying to balance this weapon properly. I think it's in a pretty good place at the moment, but I don't think it's perfect or necessarily the best gun in every scenario. But it's far from being one of the worst guns in the game, and that's literally no debate. Coming today at the number 6 spot is the Micro Uzi. This is really the unsung hero of the SMGs. Of course, it doesn't have the most damage per bullet. It's not quite near the Vector when it comes to fire rate either. It's undergone so many changes, from getting its iron sights adjusted like 3 or 4 times and then finally giving it the capability to run a red dot or a hollow. The Uzi is best at being reliable during the early game and even late game, and because you don't need as many attachments to fully kit this out as something like a Vector or even an MP5, it's much less high maintenance than those weapons. You can really catch people off guard using a Micro Uzi, especially somebody who's fully level 3'd out. They're going to get absolutely deleted. Uzi is also one of the very few SMGs in the game that can't run a laser sight, which is unfortunate because I feel as if it would greatly benefit from having that capability. Maybe that will be an option in the future, but we'll have to wait and see. It also appears on every map, so it's never a bad option to keep in your back pocket. Coming today at the number 5 spot is going to be a very unexpected one. I'm going to give this though to the double barrel shotgun. By no means am I saying that shotguns are the most viable and competitive thing in the game, but as far as the shotgun class goes, this is probably the best of the bunch, not including the DBS, of course. The cool thing about the shotgun buff that happened a couple months ago, when combined with the shotgun choke, this weapon has the range that would really surprise you. The problem is that often doesn't happen because many players just pass up on it, or you never really go out of your way to get this weapon plus the shotgun choke and then try that out at that particular range. It's just something that isn't very common. By no means the best weapon in the entire game, but just as far as the shotgun classes and just in general up close engagements, this is definitely something you're going to want to make sure you keep an eye on. Moving along here, guys, and coming in today at the number 4 spot is going to be the DP28. Now, this DP is truly one of a kind when it comes to its weapon class. It is an absolute laser, and I feel as if it gets criminally underrated, not only because it doesn't appear on every single map, but also its lack of options, and I honestly believe just because it looks very weird. It's a shame because in my opinion, this weapon can really hold itself at all ranges. Its biggest deterrent is probably going to be its reload speed, which you can't really do anything about through attachments or any customizable options. It's not quite as consistent with DMRs when it comes to those ranges, but it can still hold its own. I think during some point in the year in 2020, we're going to see a lot more LMGs maybe compete with the M249 and the DP28. These are the only 2 weapons in their class, so I'd like to see a little bit more variety and competition. Maybe would spice up the gameplay of the DP a little bit more. I have no idea. But just in terms of a standalone weapon, I think the DP is one of the most criminally underrated guns in the entire game. But moving on, coming in at the number 3 spot is going to be a Sanhok exclusive. This is the QBZ. Of course, the QBZ is the replacement, the alternate 5.56 AR, the Scar L replacement, if you will, for Sanhok, and of course, the M416 does boast a little bit better stats in most of the relevant categories, but something that I feel like a lot of players don't know about the QBZ is the impact power on this is actually the same as the AUG. The QBZ bullet travel speed versus the M416 is marginally slower where you wouldn't even notice. Fire rate, however, is noticeably slower, but not too bad compared to the M4, but the impact power is so much better on the QBZ, it's not even close. I would even argue the QBZ is easier to control than the M416, assuming they're both kitted out with the same attachments. Slower fire rate means less aggressive horizontal and vertical kick, which in a weapon like this is something you really need to have in check. I really need to start trying the QBZ more. Of course, it gets passed up almost by every player on Sanhok just because people know that it's generally better. I still feel as if it deserves a spot on the table of one of the best 5.56 AR, so I'm probably going to start playing this a lot more in games to come, and I recommend you guys try the same thing and let me know what you think. Coming in today at the number 2 spot is my favorite, the king of DMRs that, of course, isn't a crate exclusive weapon, the SLR. I've been ranting and raving about for the past 2 weeks. You put the SLR and the SKS side by side with their statistics, and it's a landslide. Higher damage per bullet than the SKS, as well as better velocity. The only trade-off is, of course, the more difficult recoil to manage, but if you can get that down, there is no reason to choose the SKS over this. A lot of the weapons that behave similarly in this game have very slight damage table differences. M4 and M16 only have a 2-point damage difference, but the SLR and SKS have a full 5. It isn't even close, and the more I think about it, the more I realize how good the SLR is compared to virtually every other DMR in this game, and especially the 7.62 ones. The only exception exception being the Mark 14, of course, which I really don't need to explain. It's just the better SLR. I think the weapon speaks for itself. In terms of weapons that just dominate on paper, though, you don't really get much better than the common spawn SLR. But coming today at the #1 spot, guys, I'm actually going to give it to the QBU. Honestly, this is one of the most forgotten guns in all of PUBG, and I'm not really sure why that is, because it's the Mini 14's replacement on Sanhok, of course, but from a certain perspective, you could argue that this is the better version. It does more damage than the Mini 14. The bullets are admittedly a little bit slower, but it doesn't seem to make much difference. The QBU can also be single tapped just incredibly fast, and with the, deployable bipod, you can prone out and use this as well. Sometimes I forget how good this weapon really is, and I think if it were on more maps, we would probably see much more use out of this thing, especially compared to the Mini 14, which you can debate about which one is better, but I think these are properly balanced in a way where, they're good in different aspects to each other. There's one not just clear cut better than the other. It really comes down to what kind of player you are and how you want to use your DMR. If you've never given this gun even a second glance while looting and are just more kind of about the bolt action snipers, that's fair, but I also think that you should try and give this one a go. I'm going to try and start using this one a lot more in the future whenever I'm playing Sanhok, hopefully get much better with it, and maybe those skills and that practice will translate over very nicely to the Mini 14 skill set as well. Who knows? But that is going to be the top 10 secretly overpowered guns in PUBG. Let me know what you guys thought of my list down below in the comment section. What is one weapon in this game that you feel like is secretly overpowered that not a lot of people tend to run? If you end up enjoying the video, please make sure to give it a thumbs up. I would really appreciate that. Make sure to subscribe if you are brand new to the channel, and also, guys, make sure to follow my Twitch, which will be linked down below in the description. I'll be streaming tonight, the day this video goes live. But yeah, that's pretty much it. I hope you guys enjoyed. Have a fantastic rest of your day. Happy holidays, and I'll see you guys in the next live stream or the next video. Have a good one, and peace out.